It's 6 o'clock, so we'll get started. Good evening and welcome everyone to tonight's public hearing. My name is John Urino. I'm the zoning examiner for the city of Tucson. There's an announcement before we call the first case. And the announcement is that the fourth case on the agenda this evening, case TP-ENT 0223 00012, Broadway Rosemont Apartments. The hearing on that case tonight will be rescheduled. A question has been raised about the mailed notice for the hearing on that case for this evening. To make certain that all parties who should receive notice of the hearing do in fact receive such notice, I'm canceling the public hearing without taking any action this evening. I will hold a public zoning examiner hearing on July 20, 2023 at 6 p.m. and new notice will be given of that hearing. All protests, approvals, and comments that were given by the public to date will be carried forward and considered at the July 20, 2023 hearing, along with any new testimony, comments, protests, or approvals. So anyone who is here for that case, please have a lovely evening and a lovely holiday weekend. And with that, we'll go into the rest of the agenda. And the first case on the agenda is case TP-ENT 0423 0019 West Grant Road, a special exception case. Mr. Struve, are you presenting the case?
Yes, I am, Mr. Guarino. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a request by Michelle Santoro of Gamage and Burnham on behalf of the property owner, Mr. Ronnie Kassab of Divine Holdings, LLC. The request is for a mayor and council special exception to permit a marijuana dispensary on a 0.43 acre site that is zoned C2 commercial. The project site is located at 225 and 247 West Grant Road, approximately 500 feet east of the intersection of North Oracle Road and West Grant Road. The site includes an existing 2,600 square foot structure, and the applicant proposes to enclose an additional 952 square feet that is under an existing overhang for a total of 3,552 square feet of interior space. The project will maintain the current building height of 21.25 feet. The proposed use will comply with all use-specific standards established by the city's Unified Development Code, including limitations on the hours of operation and separation distances from other marijuana dispensaries and sensitive uses as prescribed by the UDC. With an approved special exception, the applicant will file and implement a security plan that complies with state of Arizona standards, as well as an odor mitigation plan. A total of 1 approval and 1 protest have been received for this site. The Planning and Development Services Department recommends approval of the requested mayor and council special exception, subject to the submitted preliminary conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Struve. Would the applicant like to be heard?
Mr. Urino, Lindsay Shuby with the law firm of Gamage and Burnham. And I just got a new camera. So if I seem a little, this virtual world we're in, so if I'm looking at the wrong side at the wrong time, apologize.
It all looks good to me. Thank you.
Perfect. May I share my screen and share a short presentation?
Yes, please.
Perfect. Okay.
That's a good camera you got too.
Oh, well, thank you. I will compliment our IT department.
Your vendor, yes.
Okay, here we go. So, and let's see if I can play from the beginning here. That works. Oh, well, I'll just do that. Is this view okay? Hopefully you're seeing inside baseball with the little things on the screen, but technology is not exactly my foresight or my expertise. So Lindsay Shuby, Gamage and Burnham, as staff introduced, Michelle Santoro is a planner who worked with us on this case. She is enjoying vacation with her family, which is lovely. So with me tonight is a senior land use planner, Dennis Newcomb, again, on behalf of Mojave Cannabis Club, also Ronnie Kassab and Jars Cannabis. A little about Jars: they own and operate multiple dispensaries nationwide, Michigan and Arizona, and they have won multiple awards in Arizona for community involvement, retail selection, and customer service. So they are not new to the marijuana space. And I'll say even we've won over the hearts of Payson, and they're a very conservative community up there. So they have a lot of familiarity with working in a bunch of different jurisdictions in the state of Arizona. They are very interested and concerned about compliance and security, and they run a really fabulous business with high customer service. So as described, we're talking about the southeast corner of Grant and 11th Avenue, just east of Oracle. I'm sure, Mr. Urino, you have done a site visit and read the staff report as any good hearing officer would. So I'm sure you're familiar with this area. We are aware of the challenges that are in this area right now, and that doesn't deter us from being there. We believe that we can be an asset to the community. So why am I here? As Carver described, I'm here for a recommendation of approval of the Mayor and Council special exception to allow construction and operation of a 3,552 square foot dispensary. Again, we have the existing building. I love it. This is a prime example of adaptive reuse and bringing the building back up to code. We have a condition of approval for the cool roof and all those other code. We're not asking for any exceptions or deviations. We also are going to add a small extension on the property, you'll see in the next exhibit, and bring landscaping up to code, which I think will help in terms of shade and heat island and all of those things. As described, the property is zone C2. According to Plan Tucson, the land use designation is commercial, and it's situated in the mixed use center, so future growth scenario. There was an approval for a dual licensee on here, but there has been a code change that now requires dispensaries to move forward with this special exception. So again, as described, 3,522 square foot building. With that, we will operate between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. in conformance with the Tucson code, not asking for any variation. We are compliant with the code, 12 parking spots, as well as 4 bicycle spots, 2 handicapped, one available for van accessibility as well. We'll remain in conformance with all of the city's performance standards for dispensaries and upgrade and site landscaping. Again, not only the adaptive reuse of the building, but improving kind of the shade and walkability in the area, we believe will be a benefit to the area and some of the challenges that they are seeing. As described, Jars Cannabis, they're a fabulous retailer. I have to admit, I've worked with them for years, and Gamage and Burnham, we are very fortunate that we don't represent people who we don't believe are a benefit to the state of Arizona. We care very much about that. Safety is very important to them. It is regulated by Arizona Department of Health Services, but we do tend to go above and beyond. If we are approved for this Mayor and Council special exception, we'll have surveillance cameras covering the entire exterior and interior. We have found that the placement of dispensaries in areas that are facing some of the challenges that this area has, it really does decrease crime. JARS has worked with first responders, even if there is a situation that has nothing to do with our dispensary. Our security footage has to we have to maintain it for 30 days, and we welcome any involvement from first responders who want to come in and look at our footage if we can help with anything in the area. 24-hour independent monitored security alarm system, trackable and controlled key card access. As you know, everyone who works at a dispensary must have a facility agent card. That's a full background check, and security safety, very important. And there are 2 unannounced inspections a year by the state of Arizona. So not only do we have to be compliant with everything with the city of Tucson, but also the state of Arizona. Like I said, we are aware of some of the challenges, but we really like this building and we like what we can do here. Hearing officer, I know for you to recommend approval tonight, you have to find that we meet 5 of the special exception findings. I'll run through those quickly. I submit to you that we meet the standards expressly applied by the adopted codes. We do meet all the not only are there regular land use, issues with C2 or any type of commercial zoning, but then you add the marijuana section and we have so many more prescriptive standards that we do meet. And it already does have an existing approval on site. I submit to you, we will not have an adverse impact on adjacent land uses surrounding the neighborhood. I actually would say to you that I think we will do the opposite. I think that this project represents an investment and an improvement in a parcel that's currently very underutilized. The security on site, I think, will be a benefit. Mojave Jars is an experienced operator in the state of Arizona. And frankly, this is far less intensive than many surrounding neighborhood land uses and or land uses that would be permitted by right on this site. Provides for adequate and efficient vehicular and pedestrian access. As discussed, there's new paved off-street parking. We utilize our existing curb cut on Grant Road, and we are situated along an existing bike path. Condition number 4, that we can adequately and efficiently be served by public services. Yes, this is an adaptive reuse. We require no additions to city services. So we meet that. And number 5, complies with the general plan and applicable sub-regional area or neighborhood plan. It is already zoned and designated for commercial use. We are situated, like I said, in that mixed use center for future growth. And we comply with all the goals as set forth. I believe this is a valuable infill development that will provide unique and tasteful option in the area. So with that, we did have a neighborhood meeting. I'm sure you read that in the minutes. We had one participant. He was fabulous. He frankly just our neighbor to the southwest, and it welcomes us in the neighborhood. I believe he submitted a letter of support, and that's in your file. So with that, with a recommendation of approval from staff, with one member at our neighborhood meeting who's supportive of our application, I respectfully request a recommendation of approval.
Thank you, Ms. Shu. Nice presentation. Appreciate it. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case? Hearing no one, I'll close the public hearing, and Ms. Shu, you may understand this is a mayor and council special exception, so I make a recommendation, and our standard practice here is I prepare a preliminary report within 5 business days, and 5 business days thereafter, a final report. You can coordinate with PDSD on the timing, what happens after that, though. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and have a good holiday weekend. Thank you.
Absolutely, you too. Thank you.
Okay, so our next case is case TP MOD 0423000009. May have been one too many zeros. Prince 10 pad major change. Mr. Beal, are you presenting the staff report?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
So this is a request by Brian Underwood and Adam Call, the Planning Center, for a major change to the Prince 10 pad 43, to add approximately 3.3 acres from O3 office to pad planned area development. The initial parcel is within planning block 4 and would be designated for interstate commerce IC land use designation as outlined in the pad document. Planning block 4 has a goal of providing high-tech, high-rise development that includes office, commercial, industrial, and high-density residential uses. The site is the former location of the Trautel Tucson RV Park and located at 2070 West Fort Lowell Road, approximately 560 feet west of the intersection of Fort Lowell Road and North Business Center Drive. The city of Tucson, mayor and council approved the Prince 10 pad in August of 2021. It comprises 110 acres between the Santa Cruz River, Interstate 10, Prince Road, and Miracle Mile. During the initial rezoning process, several neighboring properties outside the pad boundary were examined as part of the site analysis in anticipation of any future acquisition and inclusion within the pad. These properties were identified within the pad as potential future pad expansion land use plans. Most of the pad site analysis exhibits outline that. This plan amendment or amendment to the plat proposes incorporating the Trautel property into planning block 4 of exhibit 2.B.1 of the land use plan. And this land use, again, designation and regulations will be applied to this property as part of the expanded planning block. Amending the pad requires text and exhibit revisions of the newly acquired property, and the submitted documentation outlines specific modifications necessary to amend the Prince 10 pad and to also clarify and streamline the amendment process. The proposed rezoning major change to the pad is consistent with and supported by the policy direction provided in Plan Tucson and the Santa Cruz Area Plan. Approval of the requested major change is appropriate. As of today's date, there have been no approvals and no protest.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Would the applicant like to be heard?
Yes, this is Adam Call from the Planning Center. I'm here with Brian Underwood, our Director of Planning here. Thank you, Mr. Beal, for your staff report and your help through this project. It's been great working with the folks from the city on moving this one forward. Mr. Reno, I have a presentation if I might be able to share my screen.
Of course, please go ahead.
All right, let me pull this up for you. Share. So just a brief overview. What Mr. Beal had provided was that the Prince 10 pad was originally approved in August 2021. It's 110 acres and it's located west of Interstate 10 between Miracle Mile and Prince Road. And it runs along the Santa Cruz River. Here's a couple examples of views of the property we're looking at. So when we originally had this PAD approved, we identified several properties between the property and the freeway that could be potential expansion areas for future acquisition. And the subject parcel that we are requesting today, the 3.3 acres, former home of the Traytail RV site, has been acquired by Braub Holdings, and Gary Braub is here, the property owner of Prince 10, and we want to include it into the PAD. This constitutes a major plan amendment, so we are moving through that process and seeking approval for incorporating this into the Prince 10 PAD. Additionally, there are a few minor cleanup items that we're also putting into the PAD. There's a small remnant parcel that was not included in the original boundary, and we're requesting that this approximately 1 acre along the Santa Cruz River be included, so it's not an isolated spot zoning in the area. Additionally, we processed a minor administrative amendment, including language for drainage improvements along Santa Cruz River. We're incorporating that language into the PAD here as well. And we also made some minor modifications to 2 land use categories, allowing for food truck park and gem show temporary use in the entire PAD as well. So we wanted to memorialize all those here and give you an example of what was originally in the PAD and then what we are actually proposing. The Traytail piece would be incorporated into planning block 4 and assume the interstate commerce land use designation. The 1 acre piece would be incorporated into planning block 8 and assume that same interstate commerce designation. So really trying to keep it straightforward and keep it a clean and consistent with the rest of the PAD. Adding this amendment would actually relieve a pinch point in the middle of the PAD, making for a better transition from north to south, and also a larger development area for planning area 4. And just to summarize, adding the 3.3 acre piece, we would rezone it from its current zoning of 03 to the PAD through this major amendment. It would be added to block 4 and assume the IC designation. Like I mentioned, it eliminates the pinch point and makes more consistent development throughout, and also adjusts the southern boundary along block 8 and incorporates the minor amendment language for the drainage improvements along the Santa Cruz River. We also clarify the food truck park as a permitted use and the gem show space as a temporary use. We want to make sure that these were memorialized on the record so that everything in the PAD can be moving forward. We noticed that some of this may have not been included in some of the documentation in the agenda, so we want to make sure that we presented that to you tonight. So with that,
Thank you, Mr. Cole. It's very helpful.
and with that, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
I don't have any. Your presentation was very clear and the need for the pad amendment is also very clear. Thank you very much, though.
Thank you.
Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case? Hearing no one, I'm closing the public hearing on Prince 10 pad major change. I hope both of you gentlemen and Mr. Brav as well, who's with us, have a good holiday weekend. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank
you.
The next case is case TP ENT 11220003, 6th at Campbell Pad. Before we go to the staff report, Mr. Juman, are you present?
Yes, Mr. Urino, I'm here.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Juman. I saw in some of the correspondence that was shared with me before the hearing today that there may be ongoing discussions with the Rincon Heights Neighborhood Association. And I just wanted to know whether it made sense to you to go forward with the hearing now or have a short continuance so you can conclude. I'm not leaning you in either direction. I'm just asking the question for you, sir.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Urino. So I think we'd like to move forward with the hearing. I mean, we're here, Mr. Kinney's here. I think if at the end, if you feel that it's you know, if you'd like us to continue, we're happy to do that, but
Got
I
it.
think we'd like to at least do the hearing.
Sounds good. Thank you. Then with that, Mr. Beal, would you go ahead and present the staff report, sir?
Yes, this is a request by Lazarus and Sylvan PC on behalf of the property owner Scott Cummings, SJ Cummings Properties, to rezone approximately 2.36 acres from C1, R2, and P to pad zoning. The rezoning site is located on the southwest corner of 6th Street and Campbell Avenue, immediately adjacent to the University of Arizona campus, which is located to the north across 6th Street. The preliminary development plan proposes the development of a mixed-use, multi-story development comprised of storefront retail, commercial, restaurant uses with multifamily dwelling units and/or offices above, and potential land uses permitted within the pad include a hotel. The project building heights range from 28 and 50 feet along Campbell Avenue to 70 and 80 feet moving west on the 6th Street frontage. The pad is comprised of 14 parcels, 12 of which are owned by SJ Cummings Properties, and 2 parcels are not owned by the applicant. One is owned by a private entity, and the other parcel is owned by Arizona Board of Regents. It should be noted that the pad rezoning request was originally denied by Mayor and Council on November 9th, 2021. And the UDC requires a rezoning request to wait a year until it can come back for submittal. The applicant has met this request, and the project team has continued to work with the community, and the pad request reflects their engagement and revisions to the pad since that time. As of today's date, there have been 25 approvals and 23 protests. And again, as you called out, Mr. Reno, there is a letter from the Rincon Neighbor Association, which talked about things that they're still working out. So I think I would defer to maybe the applicant to maybe go over sort of the changes that have occurred since then and maybe outline a little more things they're working on. But that's the staff's report as to date.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Mr. Juman, please go ahead.
All right, great. Or Mr. Urino, are you okay if I share my screen?
Absolutely.
All right. Can you see that?
I can.
All right, well, first, thank you very much for allowing us to present tonight. And I also want to thank staff for all their help throughout, as always. There's a few people here that I want to introduce. First of all, Scott Cummings, the applicants here, our property owners here. From For's Architecture, Miguel Fentavilla and Richard Way, they're our project architects. And then I believe Darlene Yellhairs from Somas is on, she's our traffic engineer. So if you have any questions kind of for those, in those areas, they're available to answer those. I think by now you probably know where this property is. You probably
I
have
remember.
on this case than I do, so.
Yeah.
And then the current zoning is described in the staff report. I just wanted to note in both our application and the staff report, there's quite a bit of justification for this rezoning under the applicable plans, which are Plan Tucson and the University Area Plan. Particularly Plan Tucson has a lot of policies that encourage what we're proposing: urban development, kind of taking old parcels and assembling them for more of an urban form and infill. Although the UA Comprehensive Campus Plan doesn't apply necessarily to the city rezoning, it does also contemplate this area being a mixed use residential and commercial type project. So I'm happy to, if you have any questions about any of those, I don't think it necessarily need to go into it, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'm good.
So I think I want to jump off before we start talking about the specifics in the project and just talk a little bit about vision here. Scott has really been assembling these parcels, the 12 out of the 14 that he owns, for a couple of decades. And I think over the last few years, he's developed this vision of an urban project, a mixed use project, but really a gateway kind of project to the University of Arizona. For a town with a major university, we really don't have those kind of really strong gateways at the four corners of campus. I think that's really part of his vision. And really for this part of town, with all the U of A athletics that go on, with the proximity to the university, this really is an appropriate project for the site. It's particularly appropriate, I think, because of the opportunity for multimodal transportation, walking, biking, transit. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Because we're not in the IID, or we're not in Sunshine Mile or Main Gate, really our only option to do a project like this is a PAD. Because it's, as you know, it's going to give us flexibility to on design criteria and development standards. It gives us flexibility in working with the neighborhood to maybe implement things that that we negotiate with them. So that's, I think it's kind of obvious why we're using the pad. It's really kind of our only tool to be able to accomplish what we want. Mentioned transit. We are in a great location for a multimodal project. There's 4 transit stops that are just really at our doorstep, and those are bus lines that go from all ends of town, from up to Catalina Highway to Banner South, from Pima College East to downtown. They're really good bus lines for somebody that wants to get downtown or other parts of town. We're a half a mile from the streetcar and just feet from really, I'd say, one of Tucson's primary activity centers, the university. So it really is a perfect site for a pedestrian transit oriented type of project. So yeah, I want to focus on our site plan and talk a little bit more in detail about the project. Start off with uses. Again, I think the anticipated uses are ground floor, commercial retail, definitely some restaurants, maybe some other type of complementary retail uses. Above ground, likely be apartments. We've written into the PAD the ability to do do travelers accommodation, do a hotel. That's limited to the western portion of our project that's the tallest, but there's still the ability to do that. I think there's potential for some demand there. What we have limited though is some uses that the neighbors feel are problematic. One is group dwelling. So this is going to be a project that's rented by the unit. We've actually wrote in that you can't have more than 3 bedrooms. So it's even a little bit more strict than the base code for multifamily. So it will definitely be a multifamily use. Also, one of the concerns we'll talk a little bit more later about in our discussions with the neighbors was the restaurant versus bar use at the ground floor. So one of the early things we did in starting to work with the neighborhood was just restrict standalone bars. So that's in the pad that is not allowed. Any kind of alcohol service use has got to be coupled with a food service use as well. One thing I did want to mention, we've got a requirement of having half of the ground floor along 6 be some sort of a commercial or retail use as well to really encourage that and help activate that area. And I think based on the location near Rincon Heights, near Sam Hughes, obviously we're going to have traffic from outside the area, but this really does lend itself as a project that will be a neighborhood amenity across the street to the east. Those restaurants are, at least it looks like Chiba Hut's doing well, Trident Pizza's doing well. I think there's opportunity for more restaurants in this area to do well. The heights of our project are pretty similar to what was proposed last time. On the hard corner of Campbell and 6th is a 50-foot height maximum. Go a little bit east or west, excuse me, and that raises to 70 feet, and then the westernmost portion is at 80 feet. I will mention, I'm sure you're aware of this, that the site actually drops a significant amount from its eastern edge to its western edge. It's about a 12-foot drop from one side to the other, and I think it's about an 8-foot drop between Campbell and Martin. So I think that does have some impact on sort of how that height will end up appearing once it's constructed. Parking, we have in the pad for residential units, we've got a minimum of 0.9 spaces per unit. But you'll see when we talk about our discussions with Rincon Heights, there's another sort of alternative on the table. Parking for commercial, 1 per 400 spaces. One thing we've done in the pad to sort of promote people maybe not bringing cars or using our living here without a car is to decouple the leases for the apartments from the actual parking spaces. That's something that is commonly proposed to help kind of discourage people from actually using cars and just go straight transit or walking and biking. So that's in the pad. The parking area, I forgot to mention the height on area D. That's a maximum of 28 feet. This whole area D will be a parking structure, and 90% of the top of that will be covered by solar panels for covered parking. And we also will obviously comply with the city's electric vehicle ordinance that was passed last year. Circulation, pretty straightforward. We'll have 2 access points on 6th Street. We've also provided the ability to do a loading area on 6th, but this wouldn't be a regular traffic access point. 2 access points for vehicles on Campbell. The blue lines are vehicle access, and then the green lines here are pedestrian access. The one thing and then we'll also have some access from Warren as well. The one thing I wanted to point out is one of the things we've proposed in the pad, not as a requirement, because this is really a separate process with the city, but our project and really the feedback we've gotten from the neighbors and even the university, they all seem to like this idea, is to work with the city to try to acquire the Martin right-of-way that's sort of due south of the project. And what the benefits of this are, whether the project, whether it's our project traffic or U of A students, are mainly kind of game day traffic that uses the South Stadium Garage. By blocking that area off, it'll force that traffic out directly to Campbell and have less of an impact on the neighborhood. It's not going to solve the entire problem of post-game or pre-game traffic in the neighborhood, but I think it'll help significantly. What we would do with this area is make it sort of a landscaped pedestrian bike path that would connect to 7th Street from the project. So there'd still be neighborhood accessibility through there, whether it's bike or pedestrian, but it would block off vehicle traffic. We've also reserved the ability to potentially use that for maybe a drainage facility if we need to for the project, but that's just speculative. That's pretty far down the line. So, but at least we've sort of saved that to have the ability to use that. And then I mentioned the pedestrian connections are really just along the edge. We've got some illustrations that show sort of the look and feel of what we want. We want to create a pedestrian friendly environment, and I'll show you that in a minute. We did do a traffic study for the project. A couple things about this study is we used actually the data that we collected in 2019 for the first rezoning. The city was comfortable with us using that because that data had more traffic than and it was pre-pandemic. So that study had more traffic than has been collected since. So the city was agreeable to use those counts. And then the other thing that our traffic study actually doesn't do is give credit for those multimodal trips. So the study was based on an apartment complex. We used 323 units for the project. That's probably higher than we're anticipating. And we didn't build in any credits for pedestrians, bicycles, or transit. So our traffic study is really very, very conservative. It's kind of a worst case scenario. We're pretty confident that once this is built, that there's going to be a lot of residents that use transit, that use bikes, that walk, particularly those that are working or maybe attending school at U of A. There's no real reason to get in your car from this site. So it really, I think it really is a traffic study that's fairly conservative. Even with it being conservative, the levels of service particularly at 6 and Campbell, didn't really change much. We will have to build to extend the turn lane on 6 going eastbound that turns north onto Campbell. That turn lane right now is pretty short at 65 feet. It'll have to be extended to over 200 feet. We might also have to build a turn lane into the project, but DTM is willing to sort of put that on hold and not make it necessarily a requirement, to really look to see what our site design will be at the time of development. But it's potentially something that they may require. The downside is that would take away sidewalk space and really maybe not be advantageous to that pedestrian environment in that area. So those are the kind of the concerns that we balance at that time. But again, that's something that's down the road.
So If I can ask real quick. So folks coming up from Broadway to come to the project, they're coming up Campbell. How are they getting in?
If you're going north on Campbell, you
Yeah,
could do a U-turn at 6th, and then there's 2 entrances on Campbell, or you could do a left-hand turn going westbound on 6th. The Martin, there's an entrance there at Martin, and there's another entrance there at the Martin entrance, we did anticipate there being a left-hand turn there, but we also don't think that there'll be any restrictions to it. I think the main area we thought there would be a left-hand turn into the project off of 6 is here in this area, a little bit beyond Martin. And then the other option is to go down to Warren and enter through sort of the back of the project.
so it's a U-turn, primarily a U-turn off Campbell.
The fastest, closest access would be a U-turn, but then I think there's multiple access points
Because
along.
there's no median cut there, right?
There's a turn lane. It's 2 lanes with a turn lane. On there's no.
Yeah, I'm still on Campbell.
All right. There's no median cut there. Yeah.
Got it. Go ahead.
The final thing the traffic study recommended was to have a ride share space, not at the exterior on 6 or Campbell, but sort of interior to the project. So I'm going to go back to our site plan. So this is the most likely area for ride share is within this Martin, what's now the Martin right-of-way area.
Mhm.
Likely how this is going to function, well, there's 2 possible ways this functions, but both of them will keep Martin open. There's currently a lot of utilities and easements that run through here, so we will not be blocking off Martin. It'll be open for traffic. What could happen is we build over it, so it's similar to over at I think it's Hub 4 near Park and Speedway. There's an alley there where the alley access is open. Public access is maintained through easements. All of the utility easements are maintained. We work with fire to make sure we have enough clearance, but you essentially have a tunnel there that has units on top and allows for clearance on the bottom. It's also possible that you have 2 buildings and you don't have that, but in either instance, Martin is going to remain open. So where you do have maintained connectivity to the South Stadium parking, connectivity to our parking garages and that alley as well. So just a few other things to point out. The trash area would be between our building A or our area A and the south parking garage, because that's in an area that really has the parking garage will insulate the Rincon Heights homes and help cut down on noise. Kind of moving to the top of the building, we did ride into the pad, and we've continued to have some discussions with the neighborhood on upper story amenities. The way we've structured those in the pad is we would not allow an amenity on the very top of either of any of the sections of the project, A, B, or C, and obviously not on the roof of the parking deck, because that's all going to be parking. But we would allow rooftop amenities that are sort of below that top level. So what that does is it creates a natural sound barrier and insulates those rooftop amenities from the south and east and the west, and really kind of directs those amenities to the north towards campus, where there's less, obviously less homes, and a lot more space for that noise to travel and not affect anybody. We've also committed to some safety measures to either have buffering on the edges or sort of canopies down below that would protect the pedestrians from anything that might accidentally fall from the roof. And then that's really the main things related to upper level amenities. We also included some things in the pad related to water conservation. One of those things was water sense fixtures, but that just got adopted or approved, I think, last month by mayor and council as a code change. So we've got it in our pad, but it's now code. But also including things like no water features and just committing to sort of a water conservative design throughout the project. I wanted to point out on height, this was just an exhibit that I wanted to show. The highest portion of our building is adjacent to the existing South Stadium garage. So if you're on 7th Street and you're looking north, that garage really blocks all view shed impacts from our highest point. So it's just, I think we've done a lot with this design to try to limit the impacts on the surrounding neighbors, putting the parking garage next to the existing homes with a 28 feet height to kind of break up that massing so you don't have as much massing next to the homes, and then building up from the corner at 50 feet to 70 feet to 80 feet. And at our highest point, there really isn't any view shed impacts from the project. We did just a couple of conceptual renderings. Our architects did a great job showing what this could look like. Scott doesn't have any development partners. This is really just conceptual, just to give an idea of what that massing could look like. So again, 50 feet at this corner, going up to 70 to 80 feet as you move to the west. And then we wanted to illustrate really what, the vision of what happens at the pedestrian level. We've got a minimum of 8-foot sidewalks requirements and 8-foot clear at all business entrances. But then also tree landscaping requirements throughout the Campbell and the 6 frontages, lower level landscaping to help sort of insulate from the traffic or create a safer feel from the 6th Street traffic. Restaurants, having outdoor seating, just a lot of things that make a building that is sort of large for this area, but it creates a very pedestrian feel at the ground level, and really is kind of inviting. If you build these kind of spaces, I think people definitely come. I also wanted to note that we built in a design review aspect of the project. So when we get closer to the build, and we have drawings like this of what it actually looked like, maybe it'll look close to this. We have a design review committee set up that will ensure, and some design standards built into the pad that ensure that what's built looks good, and both at a pedestrian level and throughout the entire building is up to a certain set of standards that we've created at the pad. So finally, I just wanted to talk about our outreach. We had our neighborhood meeting on March 30th. We had about 40 people show up. It was a really good meeting. We had people that had concerns. We had a lot of questions. We had people who were supportive of it. And even some of the people who had concerns were not opposed. They just wanted to make sure that this is a project that fits in with the area. Before that meeting, though, we started outreach to both Sam Hughes and Rincon Heights. We met late last year with Sam Hughes, went to the board meeting. I met with their leadership early this year, And really, they were deferring to Rincon Heights because that's the neighborhood that we are closest, that this project will have the most impact on. I know that, you know, those associations are communicating, but really our focus has been to work with Rincon Heights. We started, I think it was late last year. We've had probably 5 in-person meetings, and we've been negotiating pretty actively up until today. Mr. Kinney, their representative, and I had a conversation, and I think these negotiations have really produced some good things. I think both sides are definitely negotiating in good faith. So I wanted to go through at sort of a high level what the subjects are that we're negotiating, and most of these we've come to you know, initial agreement on, subject to getting final agreement on everything. But I'll kind of walk through these. On building heights, the neighborhood has said if we can come to agreement on everything else, they're comfortable with the heights that are proposed in the pad. We've had some discussions about Martin Avenue. This has been an area, like I said, that I think there's been a lot of consensus on, but we'd be agreeable to sort of committing to that real estate services process, and Scott would apply and go through that process. There's no guarantees, because in that process you end up working with some specific neighbors, not necessarily the neighborhood association. So we can't guarantee it, but what we can do is commit to working in good faith to try to acquire that area of Martin. There was a request for a monument sign initially, but Rincon Heights has said if we agree to everything else, that they won't request that. We made some changes to the DRC. We actually did some of those changes early on in the negotiations, and those are in our pad document, but then there was some subsequent requests, mainly to add Sam Hughes as a member. Some of the rooftop amenity requirements are also, that we negotiated, are also already in the pad, but there's a few that we've added after. They're kind of minor, but things that were important in the neighborhood. Residential parking has been interesting because there's certain people within the neighborhood that would like to see sort of a limit on parking, not only a minimum but a maximum. And so again, subject to a full agreement, we've agreed to that, to create both a minimum and a maximum parking amount. And then there's another group within the neighborhood that's concerned about parking spillover. So we've addressed that by agreeing to kind of a traffic and parking mitigation fee. And part of that fee would go to help existing residents in Rincon Heights who have parking permits or parking passes that are now just from 8 to 5 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. that they would make those a 24-hour. It would, at least for a few years, sort of help them to do that. And then one of the bigger things is that we've come to an agreement, in principle, on an affordable housing, basically a donation to the city's housing and community development department for to help with other affordable, or help with projects that are affordable, preferably in the area, but it might end up being throughout this in other parts of the city. The area that we're still we haven't reached agreement on is related to having a Series 6 license. Scott wants the ability to have a Series 6 license for a few reasons. One, it's not uncommon in restaurants. If you look at Feast and Flora's and the Monica downtown, Riley Pizza downtown, there's quite a few restaurants that have Series 6 licenses because it's just more flexible. They can do packaged liquor sales. They can, they don't have to, it's administratively easier to do. It's just, there's multiple reasons why it's a good thing. One of the reasons Scott plans to be the operator of at least several restaurants that are in the center. And that having a Series 6 license would allow him to not have to basically sort of share alcohol service between all of those restaurant concepts. And the neighborhood, I think they understand this, and we've come to some agreement on this. Where we're still apart is sort of the areas, the sizes of those restaurant, the total restaurant, those individual concepts and hours of operation. But I will say I think we're pretty pleased with where we've come and how much we've agreed to. We just still have a little bit to go. So, and that is it for my presentation. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Well, so as to that last point, which is sort of where we began as well, what's your timeline look like? I mean, issues have all been raised, right?
The issues of all of it, yes, I think we have, I do not anticipate any other issues coming up. I think we've been talking about what you saw on that list for quite a while, and so really I think it's trying to work through those last things.
Okay. Well, we'll just continue with the hearing right now, and we'll see at the end. Maybe I'll have another question for you, but I'm good. Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Jewman, Mr. Cummings. Good to see you, and appreciate it. So we have a list of folks who've emailed in and asked to speak, and we'll start with those. And then after that, I'll open it up to anybody else who's in the audience who wants to speak. The first is Rick Unklesby. Mr. Unklesby.
Hi there, thank you. I live, my name's Rick Unklesby. I live 1 block away from the project. I'm 1 block north on the other side of Campbell. So I'm about as close as you can get to the project, and I've looked at it a lot. That corner is really desperate for renovation and getting something new in there. I mean, anybody that's seen that corner, not to be offensive to anything that's there, but it really is pitiful for a gateway to the university. You look over across the street at the Sam Hughes place, and it's done remarkably well. It's got much of the same features. It's got restaurants, it's got residential areas, and it's been very successful, and it's been a real contribution to the neighborhood. So being a block away, I am very much in favor of Scott's plan. I think it would enhance the whole area around this gateway to the university. We know from seeing Sam Hughes that people frequent the restaurants there, people live there, they walk to the university. It's just an astounding project that has been developed, and I think it would be a great contribution to the neighborhood. So I'm just really in favor of it just being a block away.
Thank you very much, sir. Dave Chapetta. Close enough, probably. Mr. Chapetta, are you with us? Perhaps not. David Armet. Daryl Dobris. Todd Eanes, E-A-N-E-S. Okay, I'll continue down my list. Colby Henley. Mr. Henley, are you present?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please start with your address, Mr. Henley. I know you've said it before in our prior hearings, but makes a good record.
My address is 1140 East 10th Street.
Thank you. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak primarily to the issue around the liquor license, the Class 6, which was a major concession on behalf of the neighborhood, with the understanding that there would be kind of some guardrails around that. And this was a big point of discussion in our previous hearings. And in our discussions with Mr. Cummings, he's repeatedly, stated that he does not intend to have a rowdy bar, and this is primarily around a restaurant, and that it's for ease of accounting and those kind of things. And so the closing time is one of the primary guardrails that we're looking for around that liquor license. Again, referencing these as restaurants and not bars. And Mr. Juman has referenced a few places that he said are doing well, and mimic or are kind of examples maybe of what they're looking at as a restaurant that uses a Class 6. He mentioned Trident and Chiba Hut directly across the street as successful and doing well. Both of those places are restaurants. Trident closes at 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. Chiba Hut closes 10 p.m. every night. Mentioned Flora's Market closes at 9 p.m. Friday and Saturday. The Monica downtown closes at 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday. Feast closes at 8 p.m. So just some examples of if this is truly meant to be restaurants in this development, and our request for a reasonable closing time is reasonable, I guess. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Henley. Mark Homan, Mr. Homan.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. Would it be okay if I would still like to speak, but as Rory was able to set the stage for the applicant, I'm wondering if it would be okay with you to call on Mr. Kinney, who has worked with Rory as our representative, and have him set the stage for the conversations between the neighborhood and the developer.
That's certainly fine by me. Mr. Kinney was next on my list. Mr. Kinney?
I would still like to speak at some point if I may.
Yes, I've noted that, Mr. Homan. We'll come back to you right after Mr. Kinney.
Many thanks.
You bet.
Good evening, and thank you, Mark, and thank you, Mr. Urino. My name is Tim Kinney. I'm an attorney representing the Rincon Heights Neighborhood Association. I'm sure I'm familiar because I was before you during the previous several hearings that we had during the last round. I want to kind of start by saying that we have made a lot of progress in our negotiations with the applicant through Mr. Juneman, and we are very grateful for that. And we want to give credit to Mr. Cummings and Mr. Juneman for coming to the table this time. We are very close to having a project that the neighborhood not only can tolerate but wants, and we're very close. Mr. Juneman showed on his last slide that there were two sub issues to the Series 6 restaurant bar issue, and that are outstanding that we're still discussing and going back and forth on. And as Mr. Juneman said, he and I talked this morning. We talked several times yesterday. We talked earlier in the week as well. And at the same time, I've been working, with my client back and forth all day, every day this week on these things. And we're very close. So of those two sub issues that he said were potentially still outstanding, it may even be one of those issues that is outstanding. And it's really the closing time of those Series 6 restaurants. I know that we can figure something out. I know that we're close. I think we just need a little more time. The thing is, if we have a little bit more time, maybe 2 to 3 more weeks to negotiate with the applicant, and I can have more time to negotiate with the neighborhood as well. Perhaps we can figure that last remaining issue out and come before you again, not only kind of, half-heartedly opposing this, but actually in support of this. And we would like to do that because, as we've said many times, we want something to happen on this corner. We just want it to be compatible with the neighborhood, and we're very, very close. I want to also be clear that a lot of the concessions and compromises that the neighborhood has made, and there are a lot, some of them are very big, like the building heights and allowing a class 6 license. All of these offers and compromises are conditioned on all of these issues being resolved, including this last issue of hours of operation. So potentially, if we were, like hypothetically, if you were to recommend approval of this application, and then something happens and we are not able to come to an agreement on that last issue, we're pretty much back to square one where we were several months ago, with no agreement on really anything, and full objection from the neighborhood. And we don't want to do that. And we don't want to lose out on our ability to speak up for ourselves at the zoning examiner hearing if that happens. I don't think it'll happen. But I want to be clear that that is one of the reasons that we're respectfully requesting that you continue this. I know there's a lot of issues. I'm not sure we need to get into all the different details of the things that possibly we've come to agreement on, but if there are any questions on the neighborhood's position on anything, I am happy to speak on their behalf and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Kinney. I've read the entire record, including all the protests. So I think I have a fair sense of that. Obviously, I don't know as much as you know or Mr. Juman knows. So I saw in your letter the issues of closing times, and also I'd say, I call it piped music, outdoor music. Was that also still on the table being discussed, or is it just the closing time issue then?
Well, we might have agreement on that one as well, if we can come to an agreement on the closing time.
Okay. And just so I have it in mind, what are the closing times that you're advocating for?
The neighborhood would be okay with a closing time Sunday through Thursday of 10 p.m., Friday and Saturday 11.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your participation tonight again.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Homan, let's go back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. My name is Mark Holman, as you well know now. And my wife, Barbara, and I have lived at 1619. Oh, let me show you my face here too. So she and I have lived at 1619 East 8th Street for 47 years. We've raised our children here, and we've seen many, many changes to our neighborhood. Some good, many good, some not so good. I was really hoping I'd be able to come in support of this project. I and my neighbors understand that some reasonable urban density is good for the community and for the neighborhood itself. Sure beats urban sprawl. In order to help the project move forward, we made some huge, very difficult concessions. You can only imagine the internal discussions there. Among them, height, way higher than I and many others would like. A Series 6 liquor license, which would allow Mr. Cummings to sell packaged liquor and have some greater flexibility in serving alcohol, among other concessions we've made. After waiting weeks to hear from Mr. Cummings, last Monday night, he finally gave us a response that seemed to have us moving in the right direction. There seemed to be some light coming to the end of this very long tunnel. Then apparently he had a Series 6 in hand. He now rejected our reasonable stance on the closing hours of the restaurants, 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. for the weekends, for Friday and Saturday. Instead, he wants to open as late as 11 Sunday through Wednesday, midnight on Thursday, and 1 a.m. on Friday and Saturday. Very different from the places that Mr. Juniman had cited. This gives the truth to the lie that this is merely restaurant space. While he might keep a kitchen open late, these are bars that will be serving a little bit of food, not restaurants serving some drinks. I can't imagine saying to my wife, honey, it's only midnight. How about we go out for dinner? Given the other agreements that seem to be in place, If we can resolve this matter, we may be able to move forward. Please direct Mr. Cummings to accept reasonable closing times. This is a residential area. This is not downtown. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Homan. I'll come and cut your backyard if you want to, by the way. The next on my list is Laura Tabili. Ms. Tabili, I may have mispronounced your name again more than a year later, so I apologize.
Hey, close enough.
Thank
Can you
you.
hear me?
I can, thanks.
Yeah, well, someone recently told me that who is from the old country that we've all been mispronouncing our names all our life. So I'm here to reinforce what Colby Henley and Mark Homan had to say, and for that matter, Tim Kinney. And that is that we have in fact been in protracted negotiations with this developer, which I think you know because you're probably getting sick of seeing us. And we seem to have been very close to a resolution, partly because, as Mark said, we gave ground on a number of things that many of us had reservations about, including building heights. And many of us still aren't very happy about the Class 6 liquor license. However, we were assured it was for purposes of having alcohol in restaurants. And so much to my surprise, to just speak for myself, the hours of the closing hours that Mr. Cummings wants are just really completely unacceptable. And it seems to me 1 a.m. closing is not closing time for a restaurant. And I appreciate that Colby actually did the research on the other comparable restaurants in town. 1 a.m. is not a closing time for a restaurant. And the idea that midnight is an acceptable closing time in a residential area for a restaurant is also, I think, way out of line. And to speak as a faculty member at U of A, I personally do not consider starting to party on Thursday night to be a very responsible practice for students. And no other place where I have taught or studied was Thursday night a party night, because we still have Friday classes. Not to mention those people in the neighborhood who work regular jobs have to be up and at work on Friday. And so excessive noise on Thursday nights isn't really acceptable. So I'm asking you, as my neighbors have asked you, to limit the hours of opening of the restaurants from Sunday night to Thursday night to 10, and Saturday night and Sunday night, or Friday night and Saturday night to 11. And thank you for hearing me.
Thank you for coming tonight. The next person on the list is Stacy Plassman. Ms. Plassman, are you present?
Yes, I am. I was just trying to figure out how to unmute.
Well, you did it.
Thank you. I'm Stacy Plassman. I live at 1803 East 9th Street. So I'm less than 3 blocks away from the development and in Rincon Heights as well. I just want to reiterate just the same as what Colby said, what Mark said, what Tim said, and what Laura said. These concessions that we've made, the building heights, which just, they shock me, but okay. We did say a concession on the building heights. The Class 6, I never could really understand that. I mean, Class 12 is the restaurant one. And if this is supposed to be a restaurant, okay, I'm all for a restaurant. But like Mark has said before, we don't want a bar that serves a few curly fries rather than a restaurant that serves some alcohol with the meal. So the closing times are of 10 for the weekdays, which includes Thursday, and 11 for weekends is eminently reasonable. Furthermore, I have some history when I was going to CCRC as the representative. Now, CCRC is the Campus Community Relations Committee, and it has as parties the U of A, the city of Tucson, and of course, the neighborhoods that are surrounding the U of A. And this was many years ago, but there was a time when for several meetings, they were presentation was about the well-being of students. And one of the things that was detrimental to students was to have bars right on the edge, lurking right on the edge of campus. This could lead to students falling into alcoholism. It's not, it turns out it's not just, you know, a phase that up to a third of students have a lifetime handicap of alcoholism if they, you know, and so these bars that are lurking right at the close to the edge of campus is just not good. And I don't think that bars like that would be considered a benefit or a good thing to have as an entrance to the university. Now, I know that the developer has been saying since day one that he wants to make a development that is a nice entrance to the university. And I even heard Rory Juneman mentioning that was one of the things that was wanting to be done with this. Well, I just don't see how bars is beneficial in a situation like that. So as a neighborhood, we've been trying to make sure that it does not turn into, bars serving a few, bowls of popcorn along with a bunch of drinks, and even calling the popcorn and curly fries food, but is really actually indeed truly a restaurant. And if it's truly a restaurant, it should have things that go with the restaurant, including reasonable closing times. So anything that you could do to make these restaurant closing times rather than bar closing times would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Plassman. Molly McCasson. Ms. McCasson, are you present?
You can't, I need to mute. How do I mute?
Hi. Actually, I didn't expect you to call on me because I got my name in late yesterday.
There's no cutoff. If you show up at the hearing, you get to talk.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Zoning Examiner.
Maybe
Thanks to everybody who's out for this this meeting. It shows a lot of passion about the inner city and the preserving of it as a residential haven in Tucson. So I live in nearby Sam Hughes, and I really don't have much more to add other than what's already been said by Mark and Colby and Tim and Laura and everybody, that this should be a real restaurant serving alcohol and not a bar in the midst of a heavily residential area, not in need of any more bars. And I don't really have much more to say. I think that it's unfortunate that after all of this time of the neighborhood association and the residents in Rincon Heights in particular negotiating on this, it's a shame that Mr. Cummings has not been keeping his word. So I'm really sorry to see that. And it seems like it doesn't bode well for the project in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you for participating. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this matter? Go right ahead, sir. Start with your name and address.
My name is Bill Craig. I live at 2043 East 3rd Street.
Yep.
I am a part of Sam Hughes neighborhood. We're adjacent to this new program that's hopefully being put in. We're not opposed to this, but I am seriously opposed to the Series 6 liquor license. The vast majority of restaurants in this city use the Series 12 and do quite well with it. They're only asking for a 40% food sales. However, if you need a Series 6, it seems to me that you're more interested in selling alcohol than you are in selling food, and that's a bar. Mr. Cummings has 2 bars right now. He's in the bar business. I understand that the bar is the most lucrative of the ways to make money. Restaurants are much more iffy, but we're not here to make Mr. Cummings money. We're here to protect our neighborhood and to take care of the University of Arizona as well and the students, as was stated by at least one other speaker. If you would please help us to understand that this is really in the benefit, for the benefit of Tucson and the benefit of the neighbors who live adjacent to this possible building structure. So a Series 12 is quite acceptable. Series 6, absolutely not. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard from?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, so one of you please let the other ones, we'll have two folks wait and one folk talk. Go right ahead.
go ahead. Can
Who
you
is
hear
that?
me?
This is-
My name is David Chapetta, and I live 1809 East 7th Street, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, great. So I am directly adjacent to the project, and I am totally in favor of a Series 6 license, and I can't wait for this project to happen. It's been a long time in the making. I applaud Mr. Cummings for putting this together. It's taken him decades, as you guys said earlier, and I just wanted it to happen. Let's get it through. Let's get it passed through tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapetta. Next person, please.
Hi, can I speak?
Yes, you may.
I'm Nancy DeFeo. I live on 6th Street. And I have two things that I'm concerned about. One is the lack of a direct turn from Campbell into the back of the property, as you kind of pointed out tonight, requiring people to go up to up to 6th Street and make a U-turn to get in there. I don't feel that that's going to make things any safer with all of the traffic, since they decided not to put 6th Street on a road diet. And my second thing is talking about an 8-foot pedestrian walkway in front of the building is very little. And the picture they show is at least twice that, because they are assuming the building to be pushed back and there to be an overhang, which I don't see any requirement of that. So 8 feet is not a lot on a busy street in terms of being hospitable to pedestrian traffic or to having any kind of outdoor amenities in front of the building. So those two things really stuck out to me tonight. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. DeFeo. I see Mr. Kozachik's hand up and I see Ms. Peterson's hand up. Ms. Peterson, please go ahead first.
Thank you, because Steve is definitely going to say more poignant, important things, but just don't shake your head. Anyway, this is actually, as Molly said, it's very exciting. This is a city standing up and joining hands and talking to each other. And I think it's really important. I have a lot of disagreements. I had a lot of disagreements with Mr. Cummings in the previous, in his previous proposal. I think it's quite amazing that Rincon Heights has opened its doors and windows and said, okay, guys, let's see what we can do. We know we believe in more density. We believe in the need for that corner to be developed. I've been here for a long time, or I grew up here. And so I remember when that corner was Sandy Rosenthal's studio. And it was, the height of the new and the most amazing. And he happened to be, you're shaking your head, you're agreeing with me, Mr. Urinino.
It's close enough, whatever you say.
No,
Yes,
I
please
want
go
to say
ahead.
Urino.
That's good.
No trouble.
Grazie.
Anyway, Sandy was, this amazing runner for his time. He was one of the people who started ATC, which was, for him, it was ACT. So it was, he was, and it's been all kinds of other things, and it's now time to change. I have one or two things that were upsetting to me tonight when I heard one of you smart guys, maybe it was Mr. Juniman, who said, you know, if you build it, they'll come. Yeah. Lots of things to say about that. I'm going to stop right there. I'm not so sure that all of Rincon Heights or that Sam Hughes. I forgot to tell you, I'm sorry. We live in 9th Street and Treat. Sam Hughes lived here for 30 some odd years and seen all kinds of wonderful changes, and we'll see more. It worries, that worried me for him to say, if you build it, they'll come. Just think about that for a second, okay? Nancy, I loved what you brought up about the having to do a U-turn. That worried me. It most worries me, though, the idea, and we had teenagers right here. I went to the University of Arizona. I remember what that was. To say, hey, 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock on weekdays, people work, people go to school, 11 o'clock is late for a weekday, especially in Tucson. Maybe it's not in the big city, but it is still here. And to be 12 o'clock on the week, it's late. Okay, so I'm wishing with all my heart that everybody will come together and make these changes. I mean, the heights have changed. That was amazing. The times could change also. The license that will say, yeah, you get a 6 instead of a 12, that's hard for me to swallow too. Okay, I think everybody else has said all the important things to say. Please, Mr. John, and the rest of you guys, think hard about this. If they have a few more weeks, maybe they can come to it. It doesn't sound to me like we're there yet. It does sound to me like people can get there. Thank you very, very much to all of you for this. A lot of people here on a Thursday night. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
Steve.
Mr. Kozachik, please go ahead.
Thanks. First of all, I want to acknowledge all the work that both sides have done.
Yeah.
If you remember a year ago, this was like Hatfield's and McCoy's conversation. People were in complete disagreement about heights, about the bar versus restaurant, about affordability, about traffic issues. And we are like that close now. Some of the issues that are being kicked around right now are not germane to a pad, though. Some of it has got to be reduced to writing in a side agreement, which you don't, Ms. Urino, have control over. But I think that prior to you ruling on this, the other elements of the conversation that have to be reduced to a side agreement should have those boxes checked so that everyone's comfortable. And I'll give you one example, is that when the mayor and council approved a pad over on our project over on 4th Avenue called Opus, the commitment was made to follow through and do in that case was called a community benefits agreement. Not necessarily so here. Once the pad was approved, there was no leverage left for the developer to agree to the CBA, and frankly, it never got done. So I think it's great that everybody's so close. I think it would be a shame if it went off the rails at this point. I think that the points that were well made about the fundamental difference between a true restaurant and a true bar in terms of people's intent in being there. I get home pretty late at night, but I'm never still eating at midnight or later. And I think that the hours of operation that the residents have proposed are reasonable. I would love to see Mr. Cummings get to that point as well. I don't think it happens tonight, though, because as I say, the other elements of the side agreement need to be hammered out and reduced to writing, perhaps brought back to you in a couple of weeks. And so you can see people locked arm in arm in support of this thing instead of still a lot of dissension. And frankly, I'll close with saying this. You've heard a lot of dissension tonight too. I mean, there's still disagreement within the neighborhood. Some people don't like the heights. Some people don't like Series 6, Series 12. Some people don't like the U-turn. There's never going to be unanimity in this thing, but we are so close to getting the major points done that I would suggest that it might be wise to let the sides have a little more time and work it out.
Thank you. Mr. Armet, I see you have a hand up.
Thank you so much for letting me speak here. And thank you everyone for letting me come on. I wanted to say I am very much pro having a larger license, like the Series 6 license. The reason for this is it offers more flexibility. And I believe that the fears of later hours and bar-like atmosphere are far, far overblown. This is a development that is pointing out onto 6th Street and Campbell. And, you know, I live in Sam Hughes, just around the corner, and I want to have amenities on my doorstep. And I think this is a step in building a urban city. I think that, you know, many restaurant-like places have Series 6 licenses because it offers more flexibility. I do think that there could be a bar there, but I don't picture the playground being an economic business model on that corner. So I want to see something that people can walk to. I think it's ridiculous to care about a U-turn when we want to build this for people that can arrive at this on foot or on bicycle, on other things. Traffic volumes on 6th Street and Speedway have been declining year after year for 20 years. I mean, we know that traffic is going down in the city because mode share is increasing to other forms of transit. People are taking the trolley. I want to be able to walk to something. And I walk by that corner pretty much every day when I walk from Sam Hughes to the gym, the rec center. And there's not much there. And if there was more there, more people there, I don't really care what it is. And I don't think that a big license is going to cause any problems. I think that restrictive hours are just going to stifle innovation and stifle Scott's ability to provide something that's actually good. That's my personal opinion. I've lived in, born and raised in Tucson, lived in Sam Hughes, owned my house for about 19 years now. But I've had the opportunity to live abroad in London, central London. And, you know, I found that the benefits of density are fine, and it's not a big deal. Tucson is changing. It's having a suburban code, and now it's changing to more, you know, central bits of it are becoming a bit more urban. And I'm okay with that. There's still plenty of suburban stuff. And if people really don't like central Tucson becoming a little bit more lively, they can take their money. I mean, it increases the value in central Tucson so much to have options, things to go to that you don't need to get in a car to go to. That's what I really feel strongly about, is being able to go to something not in my car, on foot, on bike, things like that. So thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you for participating. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard? Mr. Jungmann, I think it's back to you.
Right. Yeah, Miss O'Halloran. Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Urino. So I guess I first do want to sort of reiterate, I'd mentioned earlier that we've had a really good working relationship so far. I'm eager to hopefully, you know, kind of reach the finish line on this. I do want to sort of explain though where Mr. Cummings comes from.
I wouldn't mind talking.
Do you want to talk?
Well, I just want, if I could just add one thing, and I'm not getting into the hours right now. I've been locating in that area for 38 years at Tucson and 6, and know that area of town pretty well. And it's been a pretty integral part, I think, of the meat of where Sam Hughes, between the market, the Rincon market that had been there for years, and now Flores. I've never had issues. I mean, we don't, just because we can stay open late at night doesn't mean we do it every night. I mean, we're next to next to an activity center, the University of Arizona. We're on the way home for a lot of people that are downtown that may be out for an evening. I just, and I will negotiate with the hours, but I think that I've had a track record of being reasonable and been a good tenant in the Sam Hughes area, once again, since August 6th of 1984, and haven't had noise complaints, haven't had problems with the Sam Hughes neighborhood. So I just got to keep that in the back of your mind as we keep moving forward and hopefully get something negotiated.
And to kind of play off on that, Mr. Cummings is a restaurant operator, right? Restaurant bar operator. And so I think part of the reason, the main reason why he's been sort of passionate about trying to stay open a little bit later is that for every hour that they're open, that's another hour of revenue. For every hour that close, it's an hour of lost revenue. And I know that that's not the neighbor's problem, but he's in a business that, especially over the last few years, is a tough business. So I just want you to understand that's where he's coming from. In addition to the fact that he is a successful operator, he doesn't have complaints at Bob Dobbs, doesn't have complaints at his other restaurants, because he operates a good business. He's conscientious about the impact on the surrounding areas. I think the other concern with this location and shutting down early is the fact that there are football games, there are basketball games, and those are open late, and there's an ability to capture sort of post-game people that want to stop in and grab something to eat and have a beer before they go home. So that's all, that's a good and kind of a natural business in that area, and he wants to be able to capture that. So, and I don't think that's necessarily unreasonable, especially if you've got an operator that's good. We have proposed some things to help mitigate the concerns, like we've proposed doing a noise study at the time of the development approvals, because at that point we'll know what the building will look like. We'll know where the outdoor spaces are and the indoor spaces are. That noise study would be able to really confirm that the noise impacts won't be significant. We're almost positive they won't be significant on Rincon Heights, because there's a huge building between those outdoor spaces that are facing north. But we understand the residents in Sam Hughes, they're concerned, but I think a noise study would go a long way to relieving those concerns. We've also proposed sort of a structure where that after the project's open for a certain period of time, first few years, we set up regular meetings with Scott and the neighborhood associations to discuss any issues, and if there's issues, he'll be willing to resolve those. So I think there's some ideas out there that I think we can help kind of come to a solution. But and Scott did it, and I at least wanted to explain sort of where he's coming from on this. He's got good reasons for it, I guess. And the neighborhood concerns, those are reasonable too. And I think everybody really wants to find a solution, and hopefully will. So anyhow, unless you have any other questions, Mr. Urino, I think we're done.
I don't, Rory. Mr. Juneman, thank you. And Mr. Cummings, thank you for sharing your views on that as well. I know you've been, I think, a very successful operator of very fine establishments in the neighborhood area. I've been here since 1980, so you know you are same time as me, more or less. Look, here's what I think we need to do. And Mr. Juneman, you know, you have from before on the liquor license issue, you have from before what my recommendation was. And you know, look, let's get real. I make a recommendation, mayor and council makes a decision, right? You have from before what my recommendation was, and it was not to have a class 6. So you guys have reached in your discussions with the neighborhood association farther than I was going to go last time around. So what I'd propose is, since it seems like you guys are down to the short strokes of wrapping the entire thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to not close the public hearing tonight, but it sounds like, and I don't believe in long delays, because I think the longer people have, sometimes the worse off they are. So I have a hearing on July 13th on another matter. I'm going to add this case, instead of kicking it out longer than that, I'm going to add this case to that if that works for your schedules, July 13th. If it doesn't, I'm happy to kick it over to the 20th.
Yeah, that's actually, that works out for both of us, so.
All right. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm not closing the hearing, but I want to thank everyone for their participation tonight. And I just want to make one more announcement. You don't have to listen to this, but I had the case. We had another case on the agenda for tonight, and I announced at the beginning, but for anyone who may have come late, case TPENT 0223000012 Broadway Rosemont Apartments. We did not go forward with the hearing tonight. The hearing tonight was canceled. It's going to be heard instead on July 20, 2023 at 6 p.m. Via Zoom, as these all are. I want to thank everyone for their participation tonight, and I hope everyone has a safe evening and a lovely and safe 4th of July holiday. Good night, everyone.